In the golden age of 8-bit gaming, there existed a world where your skill with a controller could mean the difference between glory and defeat. A time when pixelated warriors such as these would rise to the top, crowned in bright lights of victory. But unfortunately, all games of this era weren't created equally. Some faded into obscurity, while others left their mark on NES history. So today, we're going to be taking a look at Ring King for the NES. Released in 1987 by Data East, Ring King is a boxing game for the NES that attempted to bring the excitement of the sport right into your living room. Now, the game was originally an arcade title in Japan, called King of Boxer, before it brought it over to the NES for a wider audience. And we'll talk more about the comparison between the two games later on in the video. So when you first boot up Ring King, you're greeted with cheerful music and a surprisingly simple menu. You can play one-on-one with a friend, enter a tournament, or dive into training mode to hone your skills. Now, the game at its core is simple enough, with the friendly music and bright colors, but the game can take a weird turn at times. We'll come back to that. So let's start with the presentation. Now, for an NES game, in my opinion, Ring King has a unique visual style. Now, as far as the character sprites go, well, the boxers, they kind of remind me of, I don't know if, some guys remember, but back in the day, I used to watch this show called, I was a kid, Welcome Back, Carter. And these cats always remind me of Mr. Carter. If you don't know what he looks like, I'll give you a quick glimpse.
What about me, Juan?
Speaking of old shows, the referee, he kind of pulls off the whole George Jefferson thing, at least with the hair. But hey, it's 1987 for the NES, so we're gonna cut him some slack here. Now, the animation though is surprisingly fluid for its time. The boxers can actually bob and weave, throw punches, and even got a little victory dance when they win the round. And also, when you add in the exaggerated knockouts with fighters sometimes flipping backwards from a strong hit, that adds to the game's fun factor and over-the-top nature. And the background crowd, while not looking the best, I've seen better in NES games, but it's actually not the worst. You can actually make out some of the characters. And then there's the music. And pretty much this is the whole soundtrack of the game. It can be catchy a little bit, but after a while, it loops and loops and loops so much that it'll get stuck in your head for days. That's probably not a good thing. The sound effects are pretty basic. You got the punch sound, the sound when you hit the ground, and the bell to signal the end of the round. And believe it or not, when you do a flurry of punches, it's actually pretty satisfying. Making every hit landed feel impactful. It's not groundbreaking, but it gets the job done. So let's dive into the gameplay. At its core, like I said earlier, Ring King, it is a boxing game. It's serviceable, but it's not exactly on Punch-Out's level. There are better boxing games for the NES. Now, you control your boxer from a top-down perspective. And what I mean by that is you can move around the ring, throw jabs and hooks, and even dodge punches. But the controls, they're just, in my opinion, a little bit clunky at times, and it does take some time to get used to the way your boxer moves around the ring. And it can make it confusing if you're just starting to play the game, how to throw punches and land them effectively. But honestly, once you get the hang of it, there's a certain rhythm to the game that's actually pretty fun. Another one of the unique aspects of Ring King is its power level distribution system. As you win matches, you earn experience points that can be distributed across your boxer's attributes. And there's 3 categories. You can increase your boxer's punch power, the speed, and their stamina. And that allows for you to fine-tune your fighter's playstyle. So if you put all your points in punch, you'll hit harder, speed, you'll move faster, stamina, you can take a hit. And this kind of adds maybe small RPG-like elements to the game. So it does give you option and does give you a fun part of leveling up your character. And how do you level up your character? Well, training mode also plays a key role. By participating in training, you can gain experience to level up your stats. However, training isn't just a free stat boost. You actually have to win matches. You need to engage actively and improve your techniques to make the most of it. So if you want to win in the later rounds, you're going to need those points. So this system encourages players to practice, making the game more rewarding as you develop your fighter. Okay, now we've come to the part of the video where we've got to address the elephant in the room. Now, if you ever heard of Ring King before but didn't actually play it, it's a good chance because of it's this one infamous moment. Now, between rounds, your boxer goes to the corner to recover. And well, let's just say the animation here, I'll just say questionable. I like to keep it clean on here, so we're gonna move on. But if you're talking about any kind of Ring King review, you could expect this to come up. I mean, it's one of those moments where you take a double take at the screen, wondering if what you just saw was intentional or some bizarre accident, bad programming. The sprite work here is, well, let's call it an unfortunate design of choice. But regardless of that, it's become one of the most talked about aspects of the game. Now, with that said, moving on to multiplayer. One of the best things about Ring King is the multiplayer mode. Now, if you got a buddy who's up for a challenge, this game can be a lot more fun than playing a computer. And when you're playing against a real opponent, you'll definitely have to change up your strategies. So the last thing we're going to talk about is the NES versus arcade version. So let's compare the NES version of Ring King to its original arcade counterpart. Now, the arcade version, King of Boxer, features smoother animations and more detailed sprites, giving us an overall faster gameplay experience. I mean, these guys in arcade had lightning hands. The graphics were more refined, and the sound effects had a bit more impact when you landed a punch. The NES port, while faithful in many ways, they did have to make sacrifices due to hardware limitations. The frame rate is lower, and the sprite detail just isn't as polished as the arcade. In the arcade, they're tall and kind of slender. On the NES, they're kind of short and stocky. But one of the biggest differences is the difficulty. The arcade version was designed to lure you in, winning the first couple of rounds with ease, and then all of a sudden, a flip switches, and these guys are just like almost impossible to beat without putting in tons of quarters. And the fights were pretty much unpredictable. I mean, if you watch right here, this guy's just let me have it. I can't get close to him without him giving me a barrage of punches. And the NES version, while still challenging at times, I mean, you get to the last, rankings of the world tournament, it gives players more room to strategize without feeling just overwhelmed. I mean, this guy, as soon as you get in proximity, he just goes all out like Fist of the North Star, Hokuto Shinken, Hunter Hand Crack. You can't even get close to this guy. Additionally, the controls in the arcade version feel a bit more responsive. Now, the arcade had 3 buttons, opposed to the NES 2 buttons. One button, the arcade buttons went as one was dedicated to your block and sway. You had one dedicated button to your straight punches and another button dedicated to your uppercuts. In the NES, with only having 2 buttons, one was dedicated to swaying and blocking and the other dedicated to your punches. So I think that's commendable how the NES pulled that off. Despite these differences though, the core experience of the game remains the same. In my opinion, that makes the NES version a solid home adaptation, even if it doesn't fully capture the arcade's polish. So, what's the final verdict on Ring King? Well, it's a flawed but fun experience overall, offering a mix of chaos at times, some strategy needed, and of course we have to mention unintentional humor. And while it's not the most polished boxing game out there, its quirks is what makes it stand out in the NES library. Now, would I recommend Ring King? If you love retro games and don't mind some odd design choices, it's good for a quick pick up and play. If you got a buddy, it might extend it a little bit longer. And overall, as a kid, I had fun playing this game, but in today's world, that's just me. I enjoyed it. I feel like you'll get bored of it real quick. With the repetitive music, the repetitive sprites, the repetitive boxers, and pretty much the computer plays the same in every round. So I feel like if and only if you own this game, yes, but to seek it out and try to play it, I'd highly recommend playing the arcade overall. So that's going to do it for the review of Ring King. But let me know in the comments your experience with the game. Did you spend hours and hours upon playing it? Or was it just something you just played for a little while just to take a break from some of the better games on the NES? With that said, guys, that's going to do it. Please rate, comment, and subscribe as it helps the channel grow. And that way you don't miss any more gaming reviews on this channel. And with that, guys, as always, take care of yourself, protect your inner peace. God bless you. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.